Okay, let's get real. If you're in Britain right now, chances are you felt it. That sinking feeling at the supermarket till, the heating bill you dread opening, the rent reminder that swallows half your paycheck. Britain is supposed to be one of the richest countries in the world, but more and more people are asking, so why do I feel broke? In this episode, I want to take you through the harsh truth about the UK economy in 2025. We are going to unpack why inflation has been so stubborn, why your wages haven't kept up, how housing, energy, and debt are quietly draining your wallet, how Brexit and global shocks made it worse, and whether there's any way out of this mess. By the end, you'll see the bigger picture of not just what's happening, but how it's shaping the future of Britain. Segment 1: Inflation. Let's start with inflation. A couple of years ago, it hit levels Britain hadn't seen in over 40 years, peaking at 11.1% in late 2022. That meant prices rising at a double-digit clip, supermarket runs, petrol pumps, energy bills all exploding. Fast forward to 2025. Inflation has cooled down, but not enough. It's sitting around 3.8%, which sounds better than 11, but it's still nearly double the Bank of England's target. And crucially, prices that rose never went back down. Here's a simple example. A grocery basket that cost about £41 in 2022 now costs £52 in 2025. That's a 27% jump. Inflation slowing down doesn't mean that basket is any cheaper. It just means the increases aren't as brutal as before. Why has inflation been so sticky here compared to, say, the US or Europe? Energy is one big reason. Britain relies heavily on natural gas, so when Russia invaded Ukraine and gas prices spiked, our bills skyrocketed. Even today, the average household energy bill is around £1,700 a year, which is about 50% higher than before the crisis. And then there's food. Brexit, red tape, piled costs on top of global price rises. Researchers say Brexit added about a third to the rise in UK food prices, costing households an extra £250 a year. So yes, the war mattered, global shocks mattered, but Brexit poured fuel on the fire. Segment 2: Wages lagging behind. Now let's talk wages, because this is the part that really makes Britain feel broke. When inflation surged into double digits, wages simply didn't keep up. Even when people got pay rises, inflation was eating them alive. In late 2022, real wages, the value of your paycheck after inflation, were falling at the fastest rate on record. Nurses, teachers, railway workers, private sector employees, everyone felt poorer, even if the number on their paycheck looked bigger. And this isn't new. Real wages in Britain have been stagnant since the 2008 financial crash. Think about that. If you're in your 30s or 40s today, your pay after inflation is barely higher, or sometimes even lower, than when you first entered the workforce. That's nearly 15 years of going nowhere. Other countries moved on. US wages rose faster. European workers saw some improvement. But in Britain, we've been stuck. Add the inflation crisis, and suddenly people feel like they've been pushed back a decade. Yes, by 2025, wages are finally outpacing inflation again by maybe 1 or 2%. But that doesn't erase the years of losses. You can't make up for years of higher bills and debt just because the numbers tilt slightly back in your favor now. Segment 3: Housing, energy, debt, the hidden drains. Now here's the kicker. Even if inflation slows and wages inch forward, three huge costs keep hammering people: housing, energy, and debt. Housing. Rent inflation has been brutal. Rents are up 7 to 8% a year, the highest on record. For anyone renting in London, you already know how insane this is. For homeowners, it's no better. Mortgage rates jumped as the Bank of England hiked interest rates to fight inflation. If your fixed deal ended, your monthly payment probably shot up by hundreds of pounds. No surprise that mortgage arrears are rising. Housing in Britain is eating wallets alive. Energy. Even with the price cap, households are paying nearly £1,700 a year, hundreds more than before. That's after cutting showers short, turning heating off, and still watching bills eat into disposable income. Charities call it punishingly high. Debt. And then there's borrowing. When wages don't cover living costs, people turn to credit cards or loans. UK household debt is now over £2 trillion, with unsecured debt like credit cards hitting a record £14,000 per household. That's money people owe just to stay afloat. And with interest rates high, the cost of servicing that debt is enormous. Households are paying about £230 million in interest every single day. These three drains, housing, energy, debt, aren't fully reflected in the inflation stats, but they explain why everyday life feels so suffocating. Segment 4. The perfect storm. Brexit plus global shocks. So how did we end up here? Honestly, it's been a perfect storm. First, the pandemic, which wrecked supply chains. Then Russia's war in Ukraine, which blew up food and energy markets. Every country felt it. But Britain felt it worse because of a third factor, Brexit. Brexit cut us off from easy, cheap trade with Europe. By 2025, our economy is about 4% smaller than it would have been otherwise. That's billions in lost growth. Trade with the EU is down, business investment slumped, and red tape added billions in extra costs. Some sectors lost EU workers and never fully recovered. Agriculture, hospitality, transport all felt labor shortages. And food imports became pricier with new customs checks. So when the global shocks hit, Britain wasn't just unlucky. We were also unprepared. We'd chosen to make our supply chains more expensive and our economy less flexible right before the storm. Segment 5. Human impact. Let's pause here, because behind all the stats is the real human cost. Families cutting back on meals, pensioners riding the bus just to stay warm in winter, young people giving up on ever buying a home, full-time workers visiting food banks because paychecks just don't stretch. The Joseph Rowntree Foundation found over 7 million low-income families are now going without essentials, things as basic as food, clothing, and heating. And for the first time, a huge chunk of food bank users are actually employed. Imagine working all week and still needing a food parcel to survive. That's why the phrase "Britain feels broke" resonates. It's not abstract, it's lived reality for millions. Segment 6. Any way out? So, is there any way out of this? The short answer, yes, but it won't be quick. Inflation is likely to keep falling, which will help. If it drops near 2% and wages keep rising around 4 or 5%, people will slowly start to feel better. The Bank of England has started nudging interest rates down again, which will eventually ease mortgage pain. But that alone isn't enough. Britain needs deeper fixes. Productivity. We need to grow the economy again. That means investing in skills, infrastructure, tech, and green energy. Without productivity, wages can't grow sustainably. Housing. Build more homes, especially affordable ones. Fix planning rules that block development. Because until housing costs fall relative to incomes, the broke feeling won't go away. Energy. Speed up renewables. Insulate homes. Cut reliance on volatile gas markets. Long term, this is how you stop energy bills from holding people hostage. Welfare and support. Benefits today fall short of covering essentials. Restoring them to a livable level and maybe introducing things like a social energy tariff would lift millions out of daily crisis. Trade. We can't undo Brexit politically, but we can soften it. Striking better trade deals with Europe, cutting red tape, rebuilding trust, every little step helps. Without these moves, projections show the bottom 40% of households could actually end up poorer by 2030 than they are today. That's the nightmare scenario. Wrap up. So, why does Britain feel broke in 2025? Because inflation soared, wages stagnated, and the essentials, housing, energy, debt, became heavier than ever. Because global shocks collided with Brexit fallout. Because for too long, people's living standards weren't the priority. But here's the thing, nothing in economics is permanent. This crisis, as brutal as it feels, could be a turning point. If the next government, businesses, and frankly all of us demand change, Britain can rebuild towards something fairer and stronger. Right now, though, the truth is simple. Millions of Britons are working harder, paying more, and getting less. That's why Britain feels broke. The question is whether we accept that as the new normal or fight to change it. Thanks for listening. If you found this breakdown useful, subscribe to Headline Circus. More sharp explainers, more untangling of the world's biggest stories. Right here.